Welcome to another strategic analysis episode on the Australia Rugby channel. In this episode, I will be highlighting some key insights and analysis of the most recent New Zealand-Australia Rugby Championship Round 2 game. Just quickly, as mentioned in the other episode, from this week forward, I'm splitting my content into two pieces to make for easier viewing. This one being the analysis and strategy section, and then another one which you can find right over there with some player ratings and awards. Now, it was a bruising encounter on Sunday and not a pretty one to watch if you're a Wallabies fan. Let's have a look at some of the interesting takeaways. For a game played at such an incredible venue with good attendance in the stands and picture-perfect weather in Perth, it really is a shame that the biggest takeaway of the evening is Australia's inability to convert on attack or defence. They really were their own worst enemies on the night. And I'm reminded of Tate McDermott describing their previous outing against New Zealand as embarrassing. Well, that would be an operative word again for the Wallabies in this game. There are so many clips to illustrate this, so I'm just going to focus on the most striking. Right from the start, Australia allowed New Zealand into the game by missing a line-out, something which they have struggled with throughout the series. When they again find themselves down in New Zealand territory, they make the decision not to go for touch, even though they are 13 points down. Yeah, you feel conservative approach, okay, take the 3 points rather than gamble in going to touch and trying to go for the 7. Claw your way back into the game slowly. But then Lolesio misses the kick right in front of the posts. Not only losing the option to convert for the 7, but coming away with no points at all. This one was probably the most infuriating for me. On the 28th minute, Jordie Barrett has just been sent off the field with a red card, and there is a possibility to really shift momentum. But Banks just kicks the ball dead, and New Zealand have the scrum feed just outside the 22. Here, in the 34th minute, Australia is on the front foot after stringing a few good phases together. New Zealand defence is holding, but Australia is knocking on the door. And then Rob Valentini goes and does this. He passes a wild, speculative, unnecessary pass to Laulala, and all the pressure is gone. Here in the 36th minute, after good interplay and New Zealand still down a man, Australia has a good maul going. They need to trust their system. They need to be patient. But Korombete goes to the ground and then crawls forward, which he did as well earlier in the other disallowed try. It's something which the cameras are bound to pick up and the refs are so strict with nowadays. And instead of pressure on New Zealand now kick for touch and have the resulting line out 22 meters up the pitch. Here in the 59th minute, Australia has won a really good scrum penalty off a New Zealand scrum feed. They have another chance to knock away at New Zealand with a maul almost on the 5-meter line. But Folau Fahenga lobs it right across everyone and Rico Ioane can run it out to the 22. It wasn't just on attack though that Australia gifted New Zealand the game. Again, 2 intercepts in the game, which now makes 5 over 3 matches. Dave Rennie said pre-game that they wanted to keep the All Blacks to that sweet spot of under 20 points. Well, that plan lacked some follow-through in implementation. With that, the 100% win record for the Wallabies at Optus Stadium is no more. And Dave Rennie now has a win percentage for Australia of only 25%, making him the 3rd worst coach in terms of win percentage in Australian rugby history. In his defence, out of the 12 games that they've played with Dave Rennie in charge, 7 have been against the All Blacks. So the stats are slightly skewed. But the upcoming Rugby Championship games against South Africa and Argentina will either slightly redeem Rennie or condemn the man completely. In contrast to Australia, something which must by now have become obvious to anyone watching the All Blacks is just how good they are in taking scoring opportunities when they present themselves. To illustrate this, before I get to the current game, I actually want to refer to a stat from Bledisloe 2, where in the 72nd minute, the All Blacks were up 50-22 against Australia. And in terms of time in opposition 22, it was 7 minutes 30 for Australia and only 3 minutes 21 seconds for the All Blacks. When New Zealand get half a chance, they pounce. And they do this mostly by employing some of the following approaches. Firstly, New Zealand's support lines are mind-blowingly good. For any line break, they often have 4 to 5 players running support lines, which are good options and can take the ball forward. By having multiple strong support runners, they always ensure that where there is a clean break, it is converted into points. New Zealand also benefits from some real ruthlessness when they get to that red zone or 5-meter line. New Zealand has a 63% try conversion rate in visits to the opponent's 22. And Aaron Smith is especially magical when it comes to this. He just seems to know which runner will have the best possible option, and his passing is always spot on. With a lot of these players away on parental leave, all related weirdly to childbirths. Not sure what happened 9 months ago in December 2020, but it looks to have been a very productive month for some of these rugby players. But what it does allow in their absence is to have a look at some of the squad depth, some in really key positions in build-up to Rugby World Cup 2023. So what have we learned? For me, the Wallabies are very dependent on James O'Connor's return from injury, as Lolesio does not have enough experience and composure at the moment. And I don't think that's going to change in under 2 years. I think they have built some depth now with McDermott, and they may even play him over a fit again Nick White, which in my view would be a mistake. I delve into that a little in my player performances video. On the New Zealand front, Beauden Barrett stepped in well at fly half, but the All Blacks would miss Richie Mo'unga's goal-kicking and playmaking abilities, as well as his composure on attack. The same at scrum half. I mean, Webber was good, but nowhere near the incredible level that Aaron Smith operates at. Some other interesting things that stood out for me is New Zealand's poor goal-kicking. Barrett had a real chance in the absence of Mo'unga to put his stamp on the game, but unfortunately failed on some really basic kicks. And New Zealand ended up only slotting 1 out of 6 conversions. New Zealand's kicking in general in this game was a little suspect. 36 kicks from hand in total, which is a lot in comparison with only 10 kicks in the first Bledisloe game. Now, often these kicks are to find space or go around the defense, especially with Beauden at fly-off. But I mean, here in the 29th minute, we see that New Zealand would be better served just trusting their system and attacking rather than kicking the ball away, something which they did a few times during the game. One really redeeming aspect for Australia, though, were their scrums. At first glance, it looked like it might be James Slipper getting the best over Nepu Laulala, but even when the two front rows were already substituted, the trend continued. And all of the penalties were for the same offence, which was folding under pressure. And it's a difficult one to judge, but Australia take away bragging rights on this one, and New Zealand leave the field with some homework. So that's it for this week's strategic deep dive and analysis. Please let me know below in the comments what were some interesting strategies that emerged for you out of the game this week. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to be notified of any further content. This weekend's games are also going to be interesting. South Africa against Australia, New Zealand and Argentina. For interesting analysis, please stay tuned to this channel. But I think we can all feel it, right? That tension in the build-up to the New Zealand-South Africa games, and how special is that 100th test match between the two teams going to be. Until then, enjoy yourselves, and if you still need reminding, play up your footer.